COVID-19 vaccines in Texas says more than 2 million doses were administered in the first 7 weeks of the rollout.
This includes 300,000 Texans who are now fully vaccinated with both shots. KXAN's Wes Rappaport has an update on the state's plan.
As the state finalizes next week's vaccine allotments, Dr. Imelda Garcia says it is too soon to say who will be in Phase 1C and when it will start.
The team is developing some metrics about what those trigger points would be.
Garcia says the government overestimated the amount of doses initially set aside for long-term care facilities, so around 126,000 extras will be available to other eligible Texans next week.
What we're trying to do with this one-time supply of extra doses next week is to allocate them to some of the suburban counties to help get them back on par.
The Texas Division of Emergency Management launched a series of mobile vaccination units starting in these 5 rural Texas counties to fill in vaccine distribution gaps. Meanwhile, 80 military medical personnel from the Department of Defense arrived Thursday to Eagle Pass, Lufkin, and Abilene to keep up with overfilled hospitals.
Really excited about getting additional help from the state and from the Department of Defense, coupled with the vaccine.
Help of any kind is welcome news for the team at Hendrick Health in Abilene.
Hendrick Health treats 9% of the landmass of Texas across 24 counties. That's how much vaccine we need.
Dr. Garcia says the rollout leaves room for improvement.
We're not satisfied with the supply that we're getting, and so we continue to push from that regard. So we will continue to work to improve how quickly we get it out. We'll continue to fight for us getting more vaccine to Texas.
Wes Rappaport,
By
KXAN.
now, you may have heard of a group of Reddit stock investors who sent Wall Street into a tailspin this week.
It all started with GameStop, right? But as CBS 4's Mike Sullivan tells us, this new type of investor is here to stay and will have a permanent impact on the market.
Here he is, 5 seconds to go.
There's nothing quite like an underdog, a real stick-it-to-the-man story.
What happened was an esoteric.
That is, until the little guy loses.
This is so unprecedented that the financial community is hitting pause, literally, and not letting some people buy into these stocks.
A giant group of Reddit users realized big hedge funds were using an investment technique, targeting companies on the decline like GameStop or AMC.
Selling short. And when you sell short, you bet a stock is going to go down.
So the group of amateurs bought like crazy.
Well, they did that. The stock has gone crazy.
Some making millions, others losing a fortune, riding the meteoric rises and falls.
You're hearing about this 1,000% rates of return, and you think, okay, well, I want a part of this.
Financial planner Pete Dunn saying most people are likely too late now. However, that hasn't stopped this new age of trader from arriving.
There's some questions as to whether this is market manipulation.
Utilizing phone trading apps for quick day trades, generating public pushes, hoping to jump on whatever the internet says is the newest ride.
It's also inappropriate for us to use the I word. I mean, this is not investing, what people are doing, good, bad, or otherwise. This is speculating. This is gambling.
Which is extremely popular online now.
How about this drive?
Especially when it comes to sports betting. The sports betting websites don't look all too different than that of online trading apps.
Robinhood, Webull, DraftKings, and FanDuel, they're all using gamer technology the way it looks.
Charles Trzynka is a financial professor at IU.
It's like any other technology. It depends on how it's used. If you drive your car too fast, you're going to get in an accident. You don't wear a seatbelt, you're going to get in an accident. You're going to get hurt. These are fast cars.
To keep new investors from crashing, both Trzynka and Dunn believe.
Probably the easiest prediction anybody can make is that the regulators will regulate.
In Indianapolis, I'm Mike Sullivan,
President
CBS
Biden is
4
wasting
News.
no time. He's signing more than 30 executive orders and actions since taking office last week, as presidents these days mostly do when they start their terms. Today, President Biden overturned the ban on transgender Americans serving in the military, an order that President Trump put into place back in 2017 when he came into office. Now, some who have wanted to serve their country but couldn't should soon again have the opportunity to do so, and one of them joins us now. Nicholas Talbot is one of the plaintiffs in a federal court case that challenged Trump's ban on transgender Americans serving in the military. Good afternoon, Nick.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, what was your reaction when you heard that President Biden came through on a campaign promise and overturned this ban?
I am absolutely thrilled that President Biden has come through on this promise and overturned the transgender military ban. I have been trying to enlist in the United States military for years, either in the U.S. Air Force or in the Army ROTC program, which I participated in for approximately a year. So I am just absolutely thrilled to finally be able to get the chance and be judged on nothing but my merits and my abilities.
And Nick, you weren't in the military yet when the ban started. So what made you decide to take legal action against it?
This is something that I've wanted to do for my entire life. I was in the process of enlisting in the ban, and the opportunity to take legal action just presented itself. I was asked to join the cause, and I decided it was time for me to stop sitting on the sidelines and to really take more of a leadership role in doing something that I truly believe in.
And Nick, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, about what inspired you to seek to serve the country in the military, and how you got to where you are on that, and also, you know, how you think this will impact transgender Americans in general, even those who don't go to the military?
Absolutely. Like I said, military service is something I've been interested in for a very long time. I have been a college student for a very long time as well. My field of specialty is global security and counterterrorism, and I really feel like I have a lot to offer the military in that area. And I feel like the military has a lot to offer me as well, as far as experience. And I think that the overturning of this military ban is huge for transgender people all across the board, because this really sends the message that we are just like everybody else. We are as capable, as qualified, as willing as anybody else is. And we should be
largest vaccine events still underway at the Sauer in West Mobile.
Providence Hospital teaming up with Dayspring Baptist Church to vaccinate 2,000 people by the end of the day. And as Fox 10's Lee Peck reports, they're already looking ahead as the state expands eligibility for the vaccine.
It's not Sunday service, but Vaccination Friday at Dayspring Baptist Church. Teaming up with Providence Hospital, they're working to vaccinate up to 2,000 people by day's end.
I think the main reason that I enjoyed coming here was because I didn't have to go to a hospital or a doctor's office or someplace where there was people that are sick. Most of the people that come here wouldn't be sick, and so I felt safer.
For Dayspring Baptist, the partnership with Providence was a no-brainer.
You know, we don't have any of the medical expertise or any of those kind of things or access to the vaccine, but we do have a facility. We do have parking, so that is one way that there was an easy yes for us to be able to help serve this area and to be able to get this vaccine out and to keep people safe.
With enough Pfizer vaccine on hand and the manpower in place, they hope to average 20 vaccinations every 5 minutes.
It's nonstop, but it's very rewarding.
They're constantly pivoting to best practices to make the process as efficient as possible, as they now look ahead to expanding vaccine distribution to those 65 and older, as well as frontline workers.
You know, when you have 50% of the population eligible, it's going to get busy. Having those appointments, it makes it a lot more manageable. You don't have people walking up or waiting in lines for hours. They know when their appointment is, and they know they can get in and out in 30 minutes.
Roscoe and Beulah Scott just received their first dose. She's a nurse and he's over 75.
I was expecting, you know, to feel some symptoms, but I don't feel nothing. Feel fine. And didn't take a whole long time.
Yeah, you were in and out.
Yeah.
I like it like that. You and me both. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Providence says expect more mass vaccination events to continue as long as they have the doses to give. In West Mobile, Lee Peck,
PG&E crews busy working to restore the power in the Westmore Oaks neighborhood of West Sacramento.
This is what's left of the power to my house.
Katie Treichler lost her power at about 11 o'clock Tuesday night.
The 70-year-old mulberry tree in my next-door neighbor's backyard fell, hit my fence and hit my house and hit all the power lines.
The massive downed tree needed to be cut up and removed from the power lines it fell onto. PG&E removed her house from the power grid to prevent a possible fire when the power came back on. She's happy to finally be getting some good news.
PG&E told me that as soon as the power has been repaired at my house down to the meter, then they will come out and reconnect and I will have power again.
A couple of blocks away, Heather Moore and everyone on her street aren't so lucky.
We've gotten such conflicting things from PG&E. You get 20 different texts, it's coming on at this time, that time. When you call and ask them what the reason, first we were told that we had power, so we had to inform them we didn't. And now when you call, they say that they're assessing what is happening in the area, that they don't know.
PG&E calling with another message while we were speaking with her.
At this time, we are expecting power restoration in your community by the end of the weekend.
But that could mean 2 more nights in the cold and the dark. So this was a welcome sight.
Here you go, sugar.
Community organizer Peggy Bell pulling up as we were talking to Heather with gifts in hand.
From the food bank that we held for our neighbors yesterday, we had a wonderful group prepare meals with these foods, and so I have about 200 meals that I'm going to be distributing to our neighbors that don't have power.
City Council member Karina Orozco also going door to door with portable charging units and blankets donated by PG&E.
We take care of one another in time of need, and this is exactly one of those times when the West Sac spirit really truly comes out.
Thank you so much, you guys.
In West Sacramento, Walter
Americans are
McCullough,
hesitant or unlikely to get the COVID-19 vaccine. That's according to a new study out of UC Davis. These findings come from online responses of more than 800 people across the U.S. Researchers say the top 4 reasons people said they were hesitant to get a vaccine were concerns about side effects, worries about allergic reactions, doubts about the effectiveness, and preferences for developing immunity through infection.
I think that people were a little hesitant about how quickly are you moving through this process, and are you moving a little too quickly through this process? And though folks might generally not understand vaccine development, it did seem really quite quick. And so I think people wondered, are there corners being cut in terms of safety and efficacy? And so that was a big concern.
Researchers concluded that a better understanding of these reasons for COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy is needed. UC Davis is also working on a study looking into all the conspiracy theories.
More Coloradans and more challenges as the state figures out logistics. We mentioned the big day for teachers on February 8th. That's the same day vaccinations will begin for Coloradans ages 65 to 69. Phase 1B2 includes 408,000 people. 120,000 are educators, and 298,000 are in that 65 to 69 range. The state hopes to vaccinate 55% of that phase by March 5th, and that's when Phase 1B3 begins, which covers 1,150,000 Coloradans. That's for essential frontline workers, people working in food manufacturing, postal service, grocery stores, public transit, and faith leaders. It also covers people 16 to 64 with 2 high-risk conditions, things like cancer, diabetes, Down syndrome, chronic kidney disease, and obesity. You might notice one phase begins while the previous phase is still ongoing. The governor explained why.
We then want to open eligibility for the next round, or we risk then slowing down the administration of the vaccine, because once you're at around 50-55%, as we're getting very close to a 70 and up, sure, there continues to be a reduced trickle of those for a few weeks, but you really need to open it up to the next group to ensure that you're not slowing down the utilization of the vaccine. Of course, our top priority, getting it into arms.
It's too soon to tell when Phase 2 and 3 will begin. The governor says that depends on vaccine supply. Phase 2 covers Coloradans 60 to 64 and people with 1 high-risk condition. The state hopes Phase 3 for the general public will open in late spring or early summer. We know we just threw a lot of dates and data at you, so you're probably just wondering, how do I sign up? The state says educators and frontline workers can sign up via their employer. Everybody else can sign up at covidvaccine.org, or you can call the state's vaccine hotline. That is 1-877-268-2926. That hotline has been getting flooded with calls, so you may have to wait a little bit. Just be patient, but it will start running 24/7
tonight, where gun violence continues to disrupt the lives of so many people in so many neighborhoods in the city. And now one leader in the city characterizing this spike in shootings as something the city hasn't seen since the crack epidemic in the early 90s.
So Jenny Young spoke to the Police Association president tonight about this surge in shooting. And Jenny, what's his reaction to all of this?
His reaction, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The answers from City Hall, well, they're just not good enough.
Pictures showing where a bullet pierced a 3-year-old's bedroom door.
I want to ask all parents out there, when was the last time you took your 3-year-old to bed, gave them a kiss goodnight, shut the door, and then while you're walking away, did a small prayer to hope a bullet doesn't ricochet through the door and strike my child as they lay there sleeping? That is outrageous, and the community should be furious about this.
KOIN 6 has talked to many Portlanders frustrated by the spike in shootings across the city. Many of those people have had their homes and vehicles hit by stray bullets. This week, we talked to Commissioner Joanne Hardesty and Commissioner Mingus Mapps about the issue. Both city leaders believe doing more community outreach is one of the long-term solutions. After 6 months of a nearly historic rise in shootings. The city is putting more patrols on the streets starting next week, but it comes at the cost of the K-9 unit and traffic unit. The Bureau is removing all officers from those units and moving them to patrol. Portland Police Association President Brian Hunzeker says it's not the answer to the problem and believes it's going to create more problems.
The idea of putting those officers on the street, you're just moving the problem from one to the other, and it will not fix the gun violence problem. Did you see the article, I think it was even on your news channel, of the DUI driver that crashed 2 crashes in 3 days? You know who investigates that? The traffic division.
Right.
You know who finds DUI drivers and takes them off the road and holds them accountable? The traffic division, right? To think that to move them off the street in their capacity at a city this size is absolutely just ridiculous.
Hunzeker believes the solution is to invest in police, hire more officers, which the city has no plans to do so in the near future. Hunzeker says a cost-effective, quick, and easy way to bring more officers in, rehire some of the officers who retired in the last 6 months. You can go and watch the interviews that I did this week with Commissioner Mapps, Commissioner Hardesty. Both of those interviews are on KOIN.com, about 20 minutes in length. Reporting live tonight, Jenny Young, KOIN 6 News.
And Jenny, staying on top of this.
Right, crime alert tonight. More than 300 roosters now have been rescued from a neighborhood in the Northeast Valley. Las Vegas Metro Police detectives say that the roosters were used for cockfighting. Police also took one person into custody on drug-related charges, and animal cruelty charges are expected to be filed as well.
There's concern about global supply of COVID vaccines tonight as the EU and UK squabble over who gets them first. New Zealand has ordered enough to cover our entire population from 4 different companies. The government has 1.5 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine on order. It takes 2 doses to be effective, so can treat 750,000 people. It's the first vaccine we're expecting to receive and should be here by the end of March. Almost 11 million doses of the Novavax vaccine are in order, enough to give all of us the required 2 doses. It's expected to arrive around the middle of the year. We've signed on to buy 7.6 million doses of the Oxford vaccine, also called the AstraZeneca vaccine. It again requires 2 doses, so that's enough for 3.8 million people. Dependent on global supply issues, it should arrive by the end of the year. And we've agreed to buy 5 million doses of the Janssen vaccine. Unlike the others, it only requires 1 dose to be effective. That means it's enough to vaccinate our whole population and should be here by late this year. All vaccines are awaiting approval from MedSafe to make sure they're safe and effective. And as Nicole Bremner reports, their varying degrees of effectiveness are raising questions worldwide.
The race to vaccinate's well underway in Britain and the US.
I put up the back call and we arrived within an hour and a half.
Millions turning out for the relatively straightforward jabs. Less simple for many, though, the data on how much protection they offer.
There are also very important vaccine developments unfolding.
Pfizer's claiming a top dog status with efficacy of 95%. Novavax just behind, edging 90%. Rates appear much lower in some patients given Oxford AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson's Janssen vaccines, but that's not necessarily bad news.
Johnson & Johnson says its vaccine is safe and 66% effective at preventing moderate and severe illness, 85% effective against severe disease.
What we're seeing, all of these vaccines prevent severe disease. They're all going to make or have the capacity to make a huge difference.
As for when the first vaccines will arrive here, the Ministry of Health's confirmed it's still expecting negotiated delivery times to be met. But it's concerned by the European Union's introduction of export controls for vaccines manufactured in the EU and is working urgently to clarify the implications for New Zealand. The opposition's calling on the government for greater transparency.
And if there's a problem, we have the right to know. This affects every single New Zealander, not only in New Zealand but overseas, and their families. New Zealanders have the right to know the truth.
As for vaccine efficacy rates, Helen Petousis-Harris says the most important issue is
tense moments at Arden Fair Mall today when police say a group of kids pulled a gun on someone in the parking lot. When the cops showed up, the group allegedly ran away. 3 juveniles were caught and arrested on gun charges.
Dire warning from Israel. Iran could have a nuclear bomb within months, maybe even weeks.
The stage is being set for a possible military confrontation between these two enemies. So how will the Biden administration handle this huge foreign policy challenge? Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
As the Biden administration seeks a new path with Iran that could bring back the 2015 nuclear deal, Israel is sending its own signals to the regime. IDF Chief of Staff Aviv Kohavi has announced the military will have plans ready to strike Iran's nuclear program.
We're taking care of these plans and developing them during the coming year. Those who decide on carrying them out, of course, are the political leaders, but these plans have to be on the table, existing, ready, and practiced.
Israeli leaders see the 2015 Iran deal as flawed, that would only pave the way for the regime to develop a nuclear bomb. For its part, Iran is pushing limits with plans to take uranium enrichment to a level just below weapons grade.
Iran is provoking a conflict. I think a big question is whether President Biden and his team can figure out a way to stop them. Negotiation would be a good way to do it. Nobody wants a war in this region again, but Biden is going to be tested.
Middle East expert Joel Rosenberg says Iran is telegraphing intentions by taking rogue action. The regime recently seized the South Korean tanker and its crew near the Strait of Hormuz. Rosenberg says it's important that Biden and his team of advisors learned from the mistakes of his former boss, such as not including regional players like Israel, the UAE, Bahrain, and the Saudis when negotiating the Iranian nuclear deal.
But also the flaws in the deal that didn't deal with missiles, that didn't deal with terrorism, that didn't deal with any of these other issues, and left all these loopholes.
Loopholes like Iran's widespread use of proxies across the Middle East, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria, the Houthis in Yemen, and militias in Iraq that have attacked U.S. troops there.
The Iranian art of war is based on fighting on other people's lands by other people's hands.
Israeli Reserve Brigadier General Asaf Orion says the biggest factor shaping the Middle East right now is America's transition of power.
Trump gave the Iranians the impression that he's pretty unpredictable.
According to Orion, the Iranians took extreme caution about launching attacks against the U.S. with Trump in office.
The stage is set for the Biden administration. While we focus on the nuclear as the most severe threat, we shouldn't overlook Iran's dual strategy.
Concerns going forwards, of course, is Iran. But the new Biden administration's approach to Tehran, and by extension the 2015 JCPOA nuclear deal, leaves much to be desired here in Jerusalem. New Secretary of State Antony Blinken, for one, repeating claims that the United States will happily return to the deal as long as Iran returns to compliance first. Similarly, United Nations Ambassador nominee Linda Thomas-Greenfield promising to push back on Iran's nuclear aggression.
We'll work and make every effort to ensure that the Iranians do not gain access to a nuclear weapon. Unfortunately, over the past 4 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of backtracking since we pulled out of the agreement.
But officials in Iran are taking further steps away from the controversial nuclear deal, warning on Tuesday that the Biden administration will not have infinite time to rejoin the agreement, and that Tehran expects Washington to reverse Trump-era sanctions first. Then, meanwhile, on Wednesday, Iranian officials repeated threats to demolish Tel Aviv and Haifa should Israel make the, quote, mistake of attacking Iran or Iranian interests. Israel, on the other hand, refusing to wait and see, repeating promises to fight Iran wherever and whenever necessary.
ביום השואה הבינלאומי אני גם צריך לציין עובדה מצערת שהניסיונות להכחיד מיליוני יהודים לא נעלמו מהעולם. איראן מובילה בריש גלי את הניסיון הזה, והמדיניות שאני מוביל היא ברורה. אנחנו לא נאפשר לאיראן להתחמש בנשק גרעיני. אני אומר את זה לידידים ולאויבים כאחד. זו המשימה העליונה שלנו, לשמור על החיים כאן, לשמור על החיים של המדינה שלנו. אנחנו נגן על עצמנו.
Right now to our GMA cover story, dance mom star 𝐂𝐑𝐄 𝐋𝐈𝐕𝐈𝐍𝐆 coming out as part of the LGBTQ community to her millions of fans, saying she has never been happier, many calling her announcement incredibly meaningful. And Will Reeve is back with more of her story. Hey, Will.
Hello again, Amy. 𝐂𝐑𝐄 𝐋𝐈𝐕𝐈𝐍𝐆 is absolutely massive. She's got 30 million TikTok followers, 10 million more on Instagram. She's known and adored for being bubbly and fun and relatable, and now she's sharing her most authentic self, and her fans love her even more.
I am really happy.
That's teen sensation 𝐂𝐑𝐄 𝐋𝐈𝐕𝐈𝐍𝐆, radiating joy after sharing her truth. She's part of the LGBTQ community.
You guys probably haven't seen me this happy since I was on tour.
𝐋𝐈𝐕, a singer, actor, and YouTube superstar, isn't putting a specific label on her sexual orientation. She's gotten support from her parents and gay celebrities like Lil Nas X and Ellen DeGeneres.
Right now, I'm super duper happy, and I want to share everything with the world, I really do, but I also want to keep things in my life private until they're ready to be public. Right now, what matters is that you guys know that no matter who you love, that it's okay and that it's awesome and that the world is there for you.
Speculation swirled when the 17-year-old posted this TikTok dancing to Born This Way, and this picture she tweeted providing further proof.
Say hi, girls. Hi, everyone.
𝐋𝐈𝐕 first got attention as part of the popular Dance Moms series.
Do you think I could replace Chloe?
Her effervescent personality and her big bows made her a phenomenon. She's sold out stadiums on national tours, appeared on game shows, and released her own music. Her YouTube page alone attracting 12 million subscribers. 𝐋𝐈𝐕 is aware of her massive platform. This weekend, she retweeted messages about the example she sets and the role model many young LGBTQ people will see her as. GLAAD President Sarah Kate Ellis said 𝐋𝐈𝐕's story is a reminder for LGBTQ youth to love who they are and to find safe and welcoming environments to speak
in the
out.
halls of Congress all over a mask. Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush is moving to a new office, one that's away from Georgia's Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Bush says a confrontation with Greene is just one reason she's moving to a new building. Their staffs got into a war of words when they asked Greene to mask up while on Capitol Hill. Greene was live streaming at the time.
You know what? Yeah, don't yell at people. You know what? You shouldn't bring COVID positive members in here, spreading COVID everywhere. Stop being a hypocrite. Yeah, this is how it is here now. This is how it is.
Representative Bush talked about the tussle on MSNBC tonight.
I wanted it to be on her live stream that we are saying, put your mask on. And then her team turned around, and her too, but then her team is yelling, stop inciting violence with Black Lives Matter. What does Black Lives Matter have to do with this? Put on a mask and save lives.
The drama over the mask is not the only reason that Congresswoman Bush says she's moving offices. She says the move is best for the safety of her team and for her. Bush cited a recent CNN report accusing Greene of voicing support for violence against Democrats.
It seems like some other people are maybe jumping the line.
The Chicago couple had an appointment to get their COVID vaccine until the city cut them off. And they're not alone. CBS 2's Tara Molina investigates why the city was forced to cancel so many shots.
David Williams and his wife are eligible for the vaccine, and they've spent hours trying to secure a spot to get it. So when a friend suggested a code as a way to get into the system, they went for it, just to play the waiting game all over again.
I get yelled at all the time by my wife for going out once a week to grocery shop.
A weekly trip to the grocery store. That's what pandemic life has been like for 73-year-old David Williams and his wife, a former professor and a substitute teacher with pre-existing conditions that force them to take every precaution possible.
We double mask. We've gone through about every flavor of hand sanitizer you can imagine.
They're more than ready to get vaccinated, but tell me they didn't realize how hard that would be, even though they're eligible per the state standards.
And when it comes to the distribution of the vaccine, it's turned into like a search on eBay for Cabbage Patch dolls.
They've spent hours on the computer at all hours, trying to book appointments anywhere. So when a friend said a code helped them make an appointment, the Williams tried the same thing.
She said, this code is something that seems to work. Go ahead and try it out.
Finally able to secure a slot at a city vaccination site.
We had no idea that that particular code was for, what they say, home health care workers?
Until that appointment was canceled. They weren't alone. We learned through Chicago's Department of Public Health an unexpected number of people used that code to register. They didn't say what they'll do to make sure that doesn't happen again. And that's as we continue to get reports on others who are taking advantage of loopholes, like we've exposed here, by taking appointment slots and jumping ahead of those who are eligible right now, like the Williams.
So we'll just keep trying.
For CBS 2,
Commissioner and Cowboys for Trump leader Couy Griffin has reportedly spent the last 2 weeks in solitary isolation because he refuses to take a COVID test. Griffin is in jail and charged with taking part in the January 6th deadly siege at the U.S. Capitol after he posted video of himself there. A judge says Griffin has also rejected offers to speak with an attorney.
Governor Gavin Newsom has issued an emergency proclamation for San Luis Obispo and Monterey counties because of this week's winter storms.
The wet and windy weather caused flooding, mud and debris flows, power outages, and downed trees. Much of the severe damage was seen in Monterey County, where thousands of residents were forced to evacuate and a portion of Highway 1 was washed out.
The emergency proclamation directs Caltrans to formally request immediate assistance through the Federal Highway Administration's Emergency Relief Program and the Office of Emergency Services to provide assistance to local governments.
A recent cut in funding for agricultural products is putting stress on food banks who rely on them. CBS 4's Karina Vargas spoke to the local food bank on the impacts this will have on families in need during the pandemic.
So those dollars and those pounds of produce being lost now will have an even more detrimental effect on already struggling population.
Governor Greg Abbott put an order on all Texas departments to cut their budgets by 5%. This includes the Department of Agriculture, which Stuart Haniff, CEO of the food bank RGV, says they rely on.
Funds that are used by food banks, like the food bank of the Rio Grande Valley, which are vital to help source and receive produce from Texas growers to put food on the families' tables here in the Rio Grande Valley.
Haniff says these cuts come at the worst possible time when people are in need of their services.
That 44% cut is responsible for 1.3 million pounds of produce, or essentially 1.1 million meals.
Haniff adds with the impacts of COVID-19, this will cut the amount of meals they serve on a daily basis.
Now that number is as high as 95,000 every week, or 13,500 per day. So every dollar, every pound of food is crucial.
Research shows food insecurity in Texas jumped from 13% to 29% since the start of the pandemic. Haniff is urging everyone in the community to get involved and help bring back their funding.
To write to our senators, to write to our elected leaders, and beg them, share with them why these cuts right now couldn't come at a more inappropriate or inopportune time.
For those looking to help, the food bank RGV is accepting donations to help feed the families of the Rio Grande Valley. Working for you in FAR, I'm Karina Vargas.
The food bank RGV also has their drive-through emergency pantry every Wednesday. For more information, you can head to our website, valleycentral.com.
Rollout of COVID vaccines. Millions of Americans already getting their first shot. But as we know, these are adults.
Yeah, Steve, so what about the kids? Dr. Anthony Fauci says he hopes to see some kids getting vaccinated in the next few months. Here's ABC 15's Ashley Paredes with what that process may look like.
Testing is already being done on kids as young as 12, all while children across the country and here in Phoenix are being hospitalized for COVID-19.
COVID-19 vaccines are not yet approved for children, but they could be soon. Some parents excited about the option.
I have them in daycare and at preschool, so I feel safer knowing that they can go to school now with the vaccine.
The government's top infectious disease expert hopeful that children could start being vaccinated as early as late spring or summer, part of the effort to securing widespread immunity to the virus. But how do local doctors feel, the ones treating children firsthand?
I think it's great as long as we can have the evidence that it's safe and effective.
Dr. Wasim Bayan is a pediatric infectious disease specialist with Phoenix Children's Hospital. He says there are benefits, such as limiting the spread of infection, but like many others, believes we must look at the short-term and long-term effects first.
We'll be able to, tell from our experience with, vaccinating the older population.
Although a COVID vaccine for kids is still in the clinical trial stage, it's on the minds of many.
Do you think my kids need to have this vaccine, and do you recommend it?
Dr. Kristen Struble with Camelback Pediatrics wants to make sure she is confident before giving an answer, saying there are many factors to take into account.
The long-term safety data regarding any sort of autoimmune disease or something called Guillain-Barré syndrome that's extremely rare with vaccines like the flu. I'd want to see if they saw an increased number of that.
As we wait for the data, Phoenix Children's does have a message for parents. Make sure your kids are up to date on all vaccinations, including the flu shot. Co-infections have been a concern for doctors even before the pandemic.
If, a child, catches COVID-19 and at the same time they also get infected with influenza, we don't know how the two viruses are going to behave together.
If successful, there would be another round of testing to children as young as 9 and under. I'm Ashley Paredes, ABC 15, Arizona.
Codes violations will force the closure of a downtown Johnson City homeless shelter after a city board said it is not safe for people to stay at the Haven of Mercy.
Tonight, the shelter director told Ansley Daniel he's worried for the residents and insulted by the treatment from City Hall.
I definitely feel blindsided. This is an insult.
Thursday night, Johnson City's Board of Dwelling Standards and Review called the Haven of Mercy shelter on Millard Street unfit for human occupation.
There are just so many things that are problematic about this property. And some of our most vulnerable citizens are living there.
The vote means almost 80 homeless people have to leave. Action, the city says, came after nearly a year of warnings.
There was some discussion regarding the grandfathering of the building given the age, but life safety issues can't be grandfathered. We do not want any type of mass casualty, mass calamity, catastrophe there in that location.
But Rockley says he's fixed fire code problems presented during the meeting in a PowerPoint presentation.
There's no potential for fire here.
He showed us around Friday night, pointing out what he says were problems he's resolved.
We're insulted, and I would expect the city of Johnson City and the surrounding area to get behind us and help us with this.
Despite the vote to condemn,
until I get paperwork in my hand that says that we are to vacate, nothing's going to be done.
The city attorney says orders to vacate the building will be finalized next week. In Johnson City, Ansley Daniel, News Channel 11.
As for what's next for the dozens of Haven of Mercy residents, the Johnson City Housing Authority says it will coordinate with area organizations to help them find temporary housing.
Perhaps once thought of as a toy, drones have become so much more. Almost 1.8 million of them are registered in the U.S. You may even own one yourself, and turns out a lot of police actually have them too.
In our latest episode of What's Brewing on YouTube, 10 Investigation of Born breaks down how a Florida bill would expand officers' drone use and why some are raising concerns about your First Amendment rights.
More than 70 Florida law enforcement agencies either use drones already or will soon. And a Florida bill would give officers even more rights to fly.
Can you think of any situations where you wanted to use a drone, but your agency wasn't able to because of the way Florida law is now?
Yeah, I could think of protest, for an example.
But some activists are raising red flags.
These racist cops have got to go. This is a slippery slope, not just for BLM activists, but for all Americans.
Let's start by talking about where Florida law stands now on police using drones. It says a law enforcement agency may not use a drone to gather evidence or other information, then provides a bunch of exceptions for things like preventing a terrorist attack, a search warrant,
to prevent imminent danger to life, the escape of a suspect, or to search for a missing person. This new bill would add more exceptions. Getting an aerial perspective of a crowd of 50 people or more. Traffic management, but not traffic tickets. To get evidence at a crime scene or traffic crash scene. To check out natural disaster damage. And for fire department use. This is State Senator Tom Wright. He introduced the bill.
Well, Jenna, let me ask you this question, so I think it'll make it a little bit easier for you. If we know that there's going to be a large crowd of people and it's going to be on the beach, so we'll just put an officer up there in the top floor of the penthouse of the hotel with his high-powered binoculars. Does he need a warrant? No.
A few minutes into our conversation, things went south. A similar bill that you co-sponsored last year died in committee. Why do you think that this year is going to be different?
Well, the simple answer is the committee chairman termed out. That's really the answer. So to be honest with you, that person for some reason was dead set against the word. She said, if I see a drone or if I see law enforcement in the same bill, we won't hear it. And that person is termed out. So we're going to give it a run again.
Who was that person?
Thank you very much.
What was the name of that person?
I'm not saying.
Okay, I'm just going to look up who was the chair of the committee. So if you don't know.
Well, you know, Jenna, sometimes when people say that, you know, they don't want to talk to the press, an attitude like that is one of the reasons why.
Because I asked you who the chair of your committee was?
So it's really been fun talking to you today, and I hope that this has been helpful for you, and look forward to seeing you
in the
next.
halls of Congress all over a mask. Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush is moving to a new office, one that's away from Georgia's Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Bush says a confrontation with Greene is just one reason she's moving to a new building. Their staff's got into a war of words when they asked Greene to mask up while on Capitol Hill. Greene was live streaming at the time.
You know what? Yeah, don't yell at people. You know what? You shouldn't bring COVID positive members in here, spreading COVID everywhere. Stop being a hypocrite. Yeah, this is how it is here now. This is how it is.
Representative Bush talked about the tussle on MSNBC tonight.
I wanted it to be on her live stream that we are saying, put your mask on. And then her team turned around, and her too, but then her team is yelling, stop inciting violence with Black Lives Matter. What does Black Lives Matter have to do with this? Put on a mask and save lives.
The drama over the mask is not the only reason that Congresswoman Bush says she's moving offices. She says the move is best for the safety of her team and for her. Bush cited a recent CNN report accusing Greene of voicing support for violence.
A local woman was at the Charlotte airport paying American Airlines for her bags, but instead, she says the airline charged her for an African-American service charge. Fox 46's Linnea and Lewis live at Charlotte Douglas International tonight. Linnea, you spoke with that woman and the airline about what happened.
The woman tells me that she flies here frequently and even with American Airlines, but to this day, she doesn't understand why the airline hasn't taken responsibility for that racially insensitive bank statement that is tied to their name.
Apologize because it happened and it's hurtful.
Kyetra Bryant says her and her boyfriend's Thanksgiving trip was ruined last year after reading their American Airlines baggage charge.
Saturday, I noticed it. I said, African service charge. And it was just on my cell phone because I was looking at my banking app and I'm like, what is this?
She says they purchased separate flight tickets and even paid separately for their bags. She contacted the airlines immediately.
She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, I have a screenshot here on 2 different phones and a computer and it says it's from American Charlotte. So I want to know, why is it listed this way?
From November to January 5th, Kyetra says she got the runaround. The airlines blaming it on her bank, and the bank blaming it on the airlines.
The bank told American directly, we don't have anything to do with that. When you put something into your system, we charge it as the merchant charges it, and that's it. And to this day, it hasn't changed on either one of our statements.
Fox 46 reached out to American Airlines and they sent a statement that reads in part, Our team members are unable to change text when processing a charge, and we've determined the issue originated with the credit card company and bank issuer. 𝐀𝐑𝐄 says there's no way.
And there's really no justification. We definitely felt targeted because that's an instance of racial bias.
𝐀𝐑𝐄 is still waiting on a personal statement from the airlines, but she says she hopes this experience shows them that their company needs more training. Reporting live at the Charlotte Douglas Airport, Linnea Lewis.
Winds to torrential rain and packed snow. California once again is getting pummeled. 17 million people under flash flood watches. Statewide, nearly 300,000 are still without power. Meanwhile, parts of the Sierra Nevada could see up to 10 feet of snow. And in the Santa Cruz Mountains, thousands are under evacuation.
I've been here for 15 years. It's probably the worst it's been ever.
An atmospheric river is driving this nasty weather. It's a concentrated ribbon of moisture in the sky that can move water vapor faster than the Mississippi River.
Turning now to that wild weather across the country, dangerous mudslides and flash flooding slamming California, and even avalanche danger threatening the west. Will Carr is in Santa Cruz, California with the latest on all of that. Good morning, Will.
Good morning. Then after a record-setting wildfire season, Californians have been hoping for rain, but this has been like turning a shower head on full blast. We've gotten so much rain so quickly. You can see it's brought mud all the way down through this driveway. Now, this area is under evacuation, but a lot of residents decided to stay and fight. They had been working throughout the night. You can see what they've done to fortify their properties. They've lined them with these sandbags. The real concern, though, is not just the mud. It's everything that comes with it, including rocks, boulders like this, and trees that could come flowing down and damage their properties.
Overnight, that atmospheric river flowing over the west coast.
Didn't even see that, dude.
Rains flooding parts of California, washing mud from fresh burn scars downhill, slamming sludge into nearly 24 homes, injuring at least one person.
Husband was pulling her out of the house and broke her arm, getting her out of the house as mud was flowing into the front door.
The rain, relentless. Some parts of Northern California will get up to 10 inches by the end of the day.
Rain has been pounding this area, and you can see that it has turned this into a river of mud, and crews right now are doing everything they can. They're clearing out this street to protect all of the homes. How dangerous of a situation is this right now?
It's one of those where we're preparing for the worst.
California's mountains blanketed with blizzard conditions. These tractor trailers using a police escort to slowly creep off the interstate, and that UPS truck stuck, towed back on the road.
This pickup barreling down a snow-covered road, losing control, slamming into that red truck, and then another.
And in the east,
we got a tornado warning.
A tornado touching down in Tallahassee. Children and their teachers seen ducking, taking shelter in a school hallway. The damaging winds flipping this plane and temporarily closing the airport.
Millions of Californians could see flash flooding today, and we could also get up to 7 more inches of rain.
Now that a portion of Highway 1 is no longer drivable after being washed away in the storm, KSBY News reporter Alexa Bertola explains the damage could hurt local businesses that depend on foot traffic to survive.
The closure of Highway 1 could mean another blow to businesses already dealing with revenue loss from COVID. Meanwhile, crews are on scene assessing the damage, trying to determine how to rebuild the iconic stretch of highway.
New drone video capturing some major damage along Highway 1.
This was basically a debris flow within the burn scar of the Dolan fire.
The road completely gave way at Rat Creek at mile marker 30. That's about 45 minutes from Ragged Point Inn, just south of Esalen. The highway was already closed in this spot in anticipation of the storm. The scenic route is no stranger to destruction. Back in May of 2017, you may remember the largest landslide ever recorded on the Big Sur coast wiped out Highway 1 just north of Ragged Point. Now on the heels of a devastating 2020, the timing of this one couldn't have come at a worse time for businesses. The North Coast typically has a lull in tourism in January, but in February, things usually pick back up.
With that problem with that Highway Big Sur, it's not going to happen. And we were hugely impacted the last time this happened.
The stretch of road was closed for more than a year for a $54 million rebuild.
The photographs show that this is nowhere near an event like Mud Creek.
Nearby businesses saw a decrease in business like 𝐂𝐑𝐄 Coffee.
And now I think another, element for us this year is, borders are still closed. There's not a lot of international travel, which the route was really frequently visited by people, coming over and taking vacations and things like that.
The Love Story project also saw a dip in foot traffic during the last closure.
Yeah, it did really hurt us a couple years ago.
Though the worldwide destination may have a long road of repairs ahead, businesses are staying hopeful.
We're just crossing our fingers that people find us another way.
There's no estimated time frame of when the road might be repaired. We'll continue to follow this story and bring you the latest. In Cambria, Alexa Bertola, KSBY News.
The Cambria Chamber of Commerce says at least 50% of visitors are coming or going up the Big Sur Highway.
New tonight, investigators believe fentanyl was the drug that caused 4 Sacramento County Jail inmates to overdose last night. Deputies say all 4 were treated with Narcan, hospitalized, and they're now back in jail. The department is working to find out how the drugs got smuggled inside.
Now across the bay in St. Pete, masks are required anytime you're indoors. And starting Monday, the city is ramping up efforts to contain large events. We're talking 250 people or more. 10 Tampa Bay's Emerald Morrow explains how this could impact your Super Bowl celebrations.
Super Bowl 55 is all but here, and not even a pandemic can stop the big game or the big events that come with it.
Do you cancel all events, or is there a way of allowing events to take place?
For St. Pete Mayor Rick Kreisman, that answer is yes. Today he announced a new ordinance targeting big events with more than 250 people. Starting February 1st, organizers have new rules to follow.
You have to prepare a safety plan.
This goes for indoor and outdoor events. There has to be a detailed screening and sanitation plan. You can't have more people than social distancing will allow at the chosen venue. And of course, masks are a must.
Mayor Castor came out with a kind of a more strict mask policy. Are you looking at making any additional changes?
No, I think what we put in place here for this the special events, if everyone submits their plans, they follow their plans, I think we're going to do a really good job of keeping people safe.
But this isn't all just because of the Super Bowl. It's something he says the city's been considering for a while.
New Year's Eve and the holiday season, people were not so good at maintaining social distancing, at wearing their masks, at avoiding gatherings. And as a result of that, we saw spikes.
Numbers he wants to keep in check as we head into the big game.
We looked at this as just another tool to make it safer for everyone, to reduce our strain on our hospitals, and most importantly, to prevent people from dying.
Mayor Kreisman says those who don't follow the rules risk having their event.
Life or death drama at a hotel in Phoenix.
We've got an irate guest of another guest here running around with a gun here. He's beating up on his old lady.
The hotel guest runs off with his baby. Then his desperate wife calls police.
My husband just took my baby. He has a gun. He's loaded. He took the baby. He's trying to kill him. He's shooting fire. He's going to kill people. He's shooting guns.
A witness calls 911.
He has a gun and he has a baby in his arms. He is shooting. He's shooting right now.
A cop gets there just a minute later. The gunman opens fire.
Oh, hey! Drop the gun! Drop the gun, dude! He has a kid hostage right now. He has a gun. He has made 1 gunshot already. We need more units. Dude, put the kid down, man! Stop!
Other cops get there.
He's got a gun, man. He's got the kid.
When the suspect points the gun at the infant, a police sharpshooter lines up his shot. Everything is riding on this critical moment. The gunman is down, and cops race to find out if the child has been hurt.
Get the kid! Get the kid! Come here, buddy! Come on, buddy! Come on! Come on! I got the kid! I got the kid! Hey, buddy! Are you okay? Hi, man.
The gunman, identified by cops as 37-year-old Paul Bolden, was pronounced dead at a Phoenix hospital. Thank goodness, his infant is fine.
Come on, buddy! Come on! Come on! I got the kid! I got the kid!
To an armed hostage standoff at a pediatrician's office in Texas that ended in tragedy. The gunman with terminal cancer killed a doctor, a mother of 3, before turning the gun on himself. Marcus Moore has the story.
This morning, a city grieving as investigators try to figure out what led to a hostage standoff and murder-suicide. Tuesday afternoon, Austin, Texas police officers responded to reports that a man now identified as Dr. Bharat Narumanchi was holding 5 workers hostage at a pediatric doctor's office.
There were no patients or children that were at the building when the suspect arrived on scene.
Police say Narumanchi had multiple guns when he walked into the building.
He displayed a gun and told the hostages to tie themselves up. Some of the hostages were able to escape, and some of them were ultimately released.
The doctor's still inside with the suspect.
The last hostage, 43-year-old Dr. Catherine Lindley Dodson, a mother of 3, could not escape. For hours, negotiators tried speaking with Narumanchi, but when SWAT finally entered that building, both doctors were found dead.
Our hearts are just in a place that we can't even describe how sad we are.
Overnight, members of the community reflecting on Dr. Dodson's impact.
As a physician, you're ready to sacrifice your life and your time and your talents for people, and that's exactly what she did. She's a true hero.